There is a crisis of confidence in the Supreme Court. Just over a third of the country has faith in the institution, according to a recent poll. That's down more than 20% since 2018, before the decision to overturn Roe v. Wade, one in a series of controversial rulings decided by the court's conservative majority. The major shift in public confidence also follows a series of ethics concerns surrounding a few of the court's justices, particularly Clarence Thomas, who, along with his wife Ginni Thomas, is now under scrutiny for accepting lavish gifts from the wealthy conservative developer Harlan Crow, thanks to a series of investigative reports from ProPublica. A new film from Frontline digs into all of it.
A bombshell report in ProPublica.
Clarence Thomas accepted millions of dollars of luxury vacations
amid controversy.
Ginni Thomas under scrutiny for her efforts to help overturn the election.
Their histories.
She grew up with Republican activism.
He felt resentment, victimization, anger.
Their influence.
It's often referred to as the Thomas Court.
Roe versus Wade is overruled.
The film is Clarence and Ginni Thomas, Politics, Power, and the Supreme Court. Director and producer Michael Kirk joins me ahead of its premiere. Mike, great to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Nice to be here. Nice to see you.
So, one of the first things I want to ask about with this film is partly because it relates to Clarence Thomas's formative years here in Massachusetts, and it also gives us a sense of how far he came, was his time at Holy Cross College here in Massachusetts. First off, tell us about the Clarence Thomas who arrived at Holy Cross.
Well, he has about the worst backstory I've ever heard for almost anybody. A terrible deprivation in his childhood, growing up in Pinpoint, Georgia, down at the very, very heart of really a piece of America that had been forgotten by the government, by agencies, by anything else. A sort of fishing village right near Savannah, and really, really, really horrible life experience. He'd been abandoned by his father when he was very little. His mother, unable to take care of him, dropped him off with his grandfather, his abusive, overwhelmingly angry grandfather, who basically locked him up in a closet and beat him with a belt many more times than you would imagine. Tries to go to the seminary to learn to be the first black priest in Savannah, the way everybody touted him. It wasn't going to work out. He was racially treated poorly at the seminary by the white kids, primarily white kids. He gets a scholarship to Holy Cross as the head priest, is out doing the first wave of affirmative action. And it's a school at the time with about 2,000 white students, 29, 28 black students, all Catholic, and Clarence is Catholic at the time, and goes in with some of his friends from Savannah, and in they go to Holy Cross, where it's the 60s. And we call the section in the film Clarence X because he becomes a kind of campus radical, takes on the trappings of the Black Panthers, wears combat boots and and a beret. His favorite person in the world is Malcolm X. He memorizes the speeches. He does the everything. Clarence Thomas, from the deprivation that he started with, a beneficiary of the first wave of affirmative action, finds himself at a very good school up in Worcester, getting a very good education.
And then Clarence X, as it were, he describes himself as an angry young black man, takes part in some civil unrest in Harvard. Tell us about that and how it was kind of a turning point.
Clarence had never really had a kind of group that he'd ever belonged to. He didn't have a lot of friends. The kids had made fun of him when he was little. He just literally had a tough road, and he was rejected every place he went. He found a home with a handful of black students who were angry and wanted to be part of the anti-war civil rights struggle from college. So they heard that there was going to be a big event at Harvard Square. They jump in the car and drive the 40 miles down to Harvard Square, and they do participate in a night of drinking, revelry, anger, breaking windows, in the biggest, at its time, on the national news reports that the event in Harvard Square, 200, I think, people were injured, 40 students were arrested. It was a big event that Clarence participated in, then came back to campus up in Worcester and just was heartsick at himself, questioning whether he should have done it, having a real crisis about whether being the angry young man that he was really the road he wanted to take. He kind of buckles down, finishes, I think, 7th or 8th in his class, and the day after graduation gets married to, as he says, the only girl who'd been nice to him the entire time he was in college. So his experiences in that place and in that environment involve a real sea change from somebody from the South who knows nothing, somebody who decides to join the Panthers and at least to emulate the Panthers and Malcolm X, gets involved in something he doesn't really like. It becomes all too real to him, and finally does really well in school, starts wearing a suit and tie, and marries the very first woman who was nice to him, and gets from that a scholarship to Yale Law School, another affirmative action moment. So that's the trajectory of the Clarence Thomas we really profile, along with his wife Ginny, in our film about the rise of these two people and the effect they have on the Supreme Court and on the politics of America, a very big effect that they have on the politics of America and the Supreme Court right now.
And when they came together, you document in the film how, well, actually, the two of them meet at an affirmative action conference?
Yes, as somebody says in the film, if you were writing a novel, nobody would believe this novel. It's these two, a white woman from Omaha, who's the daughter of a political activist who worked with Phyllis Schlafly to do away with the ERA. So she's very binary. There's good, there's evil, with a religious fervor. She goes out and tries to knock down what in those days were called women's libers. And here's Clarence walking away from Black orthodoxy, not wanting to be a radical anymore, he was hoping at the time that he could go to Yale Law School and become a wealthy litigator in New York City. It doesn't work out that way. So he's working in government as the head of the EEOC, the Equal Opportunity Commission, and in the Reagan administration, of all things. And they meet in New York City at a convention, an anti-affirmative action convention. And as they say in the movies, the rest is history.
Now, Mike, you had been working on this documentary already for a while when we got this latest revelations that came out about Clarence Thomas from ProPublica, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a wonderful thing when you can spend 6 months on something, thinking you're making an hour, but you get so much stuff, especially from the backstory, the history of Clarence and Ginny, that you say, well, maybe we can get 90 minutes out of it. We can open it all up. PBS is willing to do it, and then you decide you've got 2 hours, and just at exactly that moment, the news breaks from ProPublica that there's been a relationship uncovered between a very wealthy billionaire in Texas and Clarence and Ginny that for years has resulted in incredibly lavish vacations, flying on private jet, riding on a yacht, going to Indonesia, going to New Zealand, going to lots of other ports of call all over the world with this Texas billionaire and his friends, many of whom happen to be people who might potentially have cases before the Supreme Court. So that when that news breaks, we know how we'll fill up the final half hour of the 2-hour film, and it will be with our own investigation and ProPublica's trying to lay out the real ethical questions that now face Clarence and Ginny, both of whom have received questionable, although not illegal, questionable gifts and contributions from at least this one very wealthy white man named Harlan Crow.
Well, it is remarkable how it ties so many of these things together because, well, first off, you know, I mentioned at the outset how your film advances the argument that this is now John Roberts may be the Chief Justice, but this is the Thomas Court. He leads this conservative faction. We also talked about the loss of confidence in the Supreme Court. And it seems like what we've just seen with this recent reporting really underscores that. That's even before this is even really sunk in, that people have this lack of confidence. Do you think that where things are right now, can the Thomas Court regain the public confidence?
Well, this is the question, Arun, and this is a big one. As we all remember, there have been many people have been, especially in legal circles, academic legal circles, very, very worried about the nature of the court, especially when Mitch McConnell did not replace or did not allow President Obama to replace after the death of Antonin Scalia, Justice Scalia, with Merrick Garland, who now ends up being our Attorney General under the Biden administration. So when that happened, and people started to look at the makeup of the court and realized that Donald Trump, who was the enemy of many people in the country who wanted to see a more liberal legal system, when they saw what Trump was doing with McConnell, sort of packing the court with very conservative justices for a lifetime appointment, there were lots of questions that started to be raised about the duration that somebody could serve. Is lifetime appointment really the right thing to do? Are we limited to only 9 justices? Should we have more? Should we have fewer? Should there be term limits? All those questions were already at play when suddenly Clarence Thomas, as he's about to really move forward with this conservative majority on the court and go into areas like affirmative action and many other, more on voting rights, more cases will come up, the Chevron case, many others that are coming forward. A lot of people, especially progressives, would like to see the makeup of the court change and believe that what Thomas is receiving these gifts, I guess they're gifts, and not reporting them, and not under any obligation to report them, whether that is something that at least that needs to change. More stringent regulations for reporting gifts. But on the other hand, what can you punish them with? It's a lifetime appointment. It's a job forever. And Roberts and no other members of the court seem to be talking about let's go inside and change the rules inside the organization.
Right.
So what happens when people start to drop off? That's the big question that hangs over the story now.
Mike, it has been great talking with you. It's 2 hours, but this thing really flies by. Check it out. Mike, thank you so much.
You're welcome, Arun. Thank you.